Have you ever noticed how some people don't need to raise their voice, yet everyone listens to them as if something invisible is pulling attention toward every word they say, without effort, without repetition, and without any sign of desperation? They don't shout, they don't beg for attention, they don't repeat themselves trying to be heard, and still, somehow, when they speak, people move, people react, and people follow as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Why does that happen? And what exactly do they have that most people don't even realize is missing in their own communication? Because the truth is, it's not about volume, it's not about the specific words you choose, and it's definitely not about speaking more. It's about something much deeper, something most people completely ignore. It's about presence, that invisible weight behind your voice that makes people feel your words before they even process them logically. And today, you're going to understand exactly how to build a voice that commands attention, respect, and obedience, not in a manipulative or fake way, but in a way that makes people feel like listening to you is the only natural response. Because here's a truth that almost no one tells you directly, and once you understand this, everything changes in how you communicate. People don't obey what you say, they obey what they feel when you say it, and that subtle shift is what separates ignored voices from commanding ones. Think about that for a moment, and remember situations in your own life where you ignored someone even when they were completely right, simply because something in their delivery didn't convince you. At the same time, think about moments where you followed someone, trusted someone, or listened carefully, even when they weren't entirely correct, just because the way they spoke made you feel something different. That's because logic alone doesn't control people, emotion does, and your voice is one of the strongest emotional triggers you have access to. Now here's where things start to get interesting, because most people believe that confidence comes first, and only after that does the voice become strong and commanding. But the reality works in the opposite direction, because your voice shapes your confidence just as much as your confidence shapes your voice. It's a loop, and if you don't control it, it becomes a cycle that weakens your presence. But if you understand it, it becomes a tool that amplifies your influence. So let's break this down step by step. Because developing a voice that makes people obey is not magic, it's not talent, and it's not something you're born with. It's a system, and the first piece of that system is something extremely simple, yet incredibly powerful, and that is control over your pace. You need to slow down, and not just a little, but intentionally slow down your speech in a way that most people are uncomfortable doing. Because people who rush when they speak sound uncertain, and people who sound uncertain are naturally ignored, dismissed, or interrupted. But when you slow your speech, you force people to pay attention, you create tension in the conversation, and you build anticipation around your words. You make every sentence feel heavier, more intentional, and more important than it actually is. Think about it. When someone speaks slowly and uses pauses correctly, you instinctively lean in, you wait, and you listen more carefully. And the reason for that is simple. It feels like what they are about to say truly matters, even before they finish the sentence. So here is your first shift. Stop trying to say more, and start saying less with more weight behind each word. Every sentence should feel intentional, every pause should feel controlled, and every moment of silence should feel like part of your message. Because silence is not empty, silence is part of your voice, and most people are too afraid to use it effectively. Now let's go deeper into something that most people completely misunderstand, and that is tone. Because tone is where people either gain authority instantly or lose it without even noticing. Most people speak in a tone that unconsciously asks for permission. They end their sentences as if they were questions, they soften their words, and they dilute their own authority. And without realizing it, they train people around them to ignore what they say, to question their decisions, and to not take them seriously. So let me ask you something very directly. When you speak, do you sound like you are asking for approval, or do you sound like you are making a decision? Because the difference between those two is massive, and it completely changes how people respond to you. A weak tone says something like, "I think we should do this," while a powerful tone says, "This is what we're doing." And even though the message is similar, the impact is completely different. So here is your second shift. Stop seeking approval in your voice and start delivering certainty in everything you say. Even if you are not 100% sure, because certainty is contagious, and people naturally follow those who sound sure of themselves. People don't follow the smartest person in the room. They follow the most certain one, and your voice is the channel through which that certainty is transmitted. Now let's move into something even deeper and more physical, something that most people never connect to their voice, which is breathing. Your voice is not just sound, it is physical, it is created by your body, and your breathing patterns directly affect how your voice is perceived. If your breathing is shallow, fast, and unstable, your voice will reflect that instantly, sounding weak, nervous, and disconnected. But when your breathing is slow, deep, and controlled, your voice becomes grounded, stable, and powerful in a way that people can feel. Even if they cannot explain it logically, they feel the difference. So here is what you need to do before you speak. Pause for a moment, take a deep breath, let your body settle, and only then start speaking. You will notice something immediately. Your voice will naturally drop, it will slow down, and it will become more deliberate and controlled. And suddenly, people will start paying more attention because you sound like someone who knows exactly what they are doing. Now this is where everything becomes even more powerful because your voice is not just about how you sound, it is about who you are when you speak. It is about identity, and identity is what people respond to on a deeper level. So ask yourself honestly, who are you when you speak? Are you someone who hopes to be heard or someone who expects to be heard? Because people can feel that difference instantly, and they respond based on that feeling. If you speak like someone who doubts themselves, people will doubt you as well. But if you speak like someone who expects compliance, people feel that pressure and adjust their behavior. So the real shift is not just changing your voice, it is changing the version of yourself that is speaking. You become someone who does not need validation, who does not chase attention, and who does not over-explain everything. Because true power is quiet. And when your voice reflects that quiet power, people naturally listen. Now let's talk about one of the most underrated techniques that can instantly transform how people perceive your voice, which is strategic emphasis. Most people speak in a flat, monotone pattern, using the same tone, the same rhythm, and the same energy from beginning to end. And when that happens, people lose interest because there is nothing to hold their attention. But when you emphasize certain words intentionally, you guide attention, you control what people remember, and you make your message stick. Instead of simply saying something like, "This is important," you shift the delivery to something like, "This is important," creating a pause that adds weight and impact. That small change creates a completely different experience for the listener, because emphasis creates meaning. So your next move is simple. Stop speaking like a machine and start speaking like a storyteller who knows exactly where to place attention. Highlight key words, pause before them, and let them land properly. Because when you control emphasis, you control perception, and when you control perception, you control influence. Now here is something that might surprise you. Volume is not power, and in many cases, it is the opposite. The quieter you speak, the more people lean in to hear you, and the louder you are, the easier it becomes for people to ignore you. Because loudness often signals insecurity, desperation, or a loss of control. But controlled volume is different. It is intentional, it is measured, and it carries authority. So instead of raising your voice to be heard, lower it and make people come to you. Make them focus, make them put in effort to hear you, because what requires effort feels more valuable. And when your voice creates that dynamic, it starts to carry real weight. Now when you connect all of these elements together, pace, tone, breathing, identity, emphasis, and volume, you start to build something much bigger than just a voice. You build a presence, something that people can feel instantly, even before they consciously process it. And the truth is, you have already experienced this before. You have already met someone whose voice made you stop, made you listen, and made you follow without questioning. And at the time, you probably could not explain why that happened. But now you understand, it was not magic, it was structure, it was control, and it was intentional communication. And now you have access to that same ability. But here is the catch. Knowing all of this is not enough, because your old habits will try to pull you back. You will feel the urge to rush your words, to fill every silence, and to soften your tone to avoid discomfort. And that is normal, but every time you resist that urge, every time you choose control over comfort, you strengthen your voice. You build a new pattern, a more commanding presence, and over time, it becomes natural. It becomes effortless, automatic, and part of who you are. Until one day, you will not even think about it anymore. You will simply speak, and people will listen. Not because they have to, but because something in your voice makes them want to. And that is real power. So here is your challenge. Starting today, begin paying attention to how you speak in every situation. Slow down your pace, control your tone, use silence intentionally, breathe deeply before speaking, emphasize key words, and lower your volume instead of raising it. And most importantly, speak like someone who expects to be heard, not someone who hopes for attention. Because when you make that shift, everything changes, your presence changes, your confidence changes, and your results change. And the way people respond to you will never be the same again. Now imagine this scenario clearly in your mind. You walk into a room, you say a few words, and everything shifts instantly. People stop, people focus, people listen, and people follow. Not because you forced them, but because your voice made it feel natural. That is not a fantasy. That is a skill that can be developed. And now you know exactly how to start building it. So the only question that remains is simple. Are you going to keep speaking like everyone else? Or are you finally going to develop a voice that no one can ignore?